So let's get to the crux of the matter then. China. It's like a black hole for a lot of us out here that's outside looking in. Can you maybe then talk about how the programmatic landscape has evolved in China, and what is it right now, the challenges that have come up, and some of the good stuff that have come up as well? So maybe you can start from Lars, since you're based in Shanghai. Yep.
Based in. Does this work? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, based in Shanghai. Yeah, so the programmatic market has obviously evolved very quickly. I mean, I remember we started out probably in about 2012. Depending on how you define programmatic, I'd say programmatic is probably about 50% of the total market value. So it should be around 11, 12 billion US dollars in programmatic value. However, that depends on how you define it, right? So this definition is basically any ads that are algorithmically traded, but a lot of this is obviously by Alibaba, Baidu, Tencent, Jingdong, the kind of actors we normally call walled gardens that operate under their own set of assumptions and their own rules of engagement. There's also, a smaller component of programmatic, which is more, I guess, akin to what we'd be used to talking about in this community here, that is slightly smaller, maybe about 20% of the market that I talked about. And we see great value. We see that it's going really well. Our clients are using it and have evolved their use of it over time. We started out mostly with RTB and kind of performance-based programmatic. Now it's moved and evolved more to PDB and awareness-based programmatic, which is very useful in terms of getting more value, moving into dynamic creative, and getting more, extraction of value also from the same audience. So yeah, it's going pretty well.
Yeah. And I guess put it in the context of a global market. China is actually the second largest programmatic market after the US, and obviously the largest in APAC. I think it's not surprising to any one of us because by the sheer numbers, right? And I think as we also spoke during lunch, one of the things that we also see with China is that they have the advantage of actually learning from overseas. So basically that advantage of them have the ability to look at what markets outside China is doing, especially in the US, in UK. So I think that certainly has basically turbocharged the development of programmatic in the market. I would even dare say that, and it's not to oversimplify it, I don't think that China is more complex or harder than any other market outside China. It is obviously harder because there's a lot of players, but if you just look at the context of it, we still have major players in the market just as we have outside China. We have players who actually obviously now are able to actually leverage their own data. They are actually able to, I think we keep calling it walled gardens, but yes, they are actually able to monetize that data. And by the ability to do that, they're able to then actually maximize what they can gain. And it's not just about selling the impression, it's about using their data to help us, better inform who our audience is, segmentation-wise, and things like that. Now, obviously, the challenges in the market is not unlike any other markets. We have challenges about fraud. We have spoken about that a lot. Last year was a year where we spoke a lot about viewability. This year was all about fraud. I mean, these things are not just something that came up. They are always something that is actually on the radar of our clients. So obviously, in the context of China, because of the, fragmentation, because of the number of players, because of the different, pace of development of ad tech presence, there is obviously a lot of education that's required. I mean, obviously, a lot of things that we do when we talk to our clients, it is also about educating them. It is about alleviating some of their fears, trying to minimize some of the risks when we actually get into, some of these campaigns.
Well, let's talk about a little bit the gardening part. We'll get to a little bit later on. But what are some of the lows, though? I mean, talk about ad fraud. It's a huge problem, right, in China, where the clients are looking for a bargain. They want to get cheap impressions, and you want to deliver on that. So you just push them. There's a lot of botnets happening at fraud. What are the clients and marketers saying about those, and how are the players actually addressing those? Maybe, Albert, you can jump in here because you're based in Beijing and obviously you're from the data part of it. So how has that come out a lot, the ad fraud and botnets stuff?
Yes. Is it okay? Yeah. Okay. Actually, fraud is a known thing. And technology-wise, actually is capable to solve it via different methods. I can just describe a few ways in Melton. You can either track outfront before you serve the ad to identify which ID are the robot or which ID are real consumer. So through the years, Melton have accumulated the big data of, because ad tracking in China, we command about 70% market share. So through the data, we can know which ID are robot, which ID are real consumer. So you can track that out front and before you serve the ad. That is one way. The other way is what we call smart verify, where after your campaign, through monitoring the what do you call that, the impression, we will know these are suspicious or not. So then you can use that data to negotiate with publisher. So, but it has extended even further now because a lot of the brand owner are actually placing their ad, paying a premium to a specific program because the program attract the right TA, the program carries some images that you want to work with. And because they pay a premium, technology now allows you to track whether they place the ad at the right place that you pay money for. And that is getting a lot of popularity right now. So technology-wise is not a problem. The only problem is the publisher got to collaborate. So right now, big brands like P&G, for example, will get us together and talk to the publisher, allow us to do this kind of different technology kind of tracking to ensure the credibility is there. Yeah.
So speaking of those publishers, we're talking obviously in China about the BAT. Do they force you, I'm sorry, not force, let me rephrase that. Do they strongly encourage you with no other option to use their tools to track their inventory, or are you allowed to actually use your own third-party kind of measurement and matrix?
Usually, of course, the first thing they'll do is very defensive. But we saw some good sign. The good sign, like among the BAT, right? Tencent now allow part of their ad resources to be tracked. Let's say Baidu, their keywords resource, we can now track.
When you say part of, what do you mean by part of?
That means they don't open up everything. They
so
just open up, I can't remember the actual proportion, but at least they are doing something. And all this is thank goodness to the pressure from brand owner, I think. And the whole market should move towards a healthy way of more transparency, building trust through data.
If I can add to that, from my observation, it depends on how competitive the sector that you're actually operating in is, right? So, for example, video, we have a very good standard across, most of the inventory that we're trading. In terms, we can do viewability. We can really, put in the measures in place that we need to make sure that it's actually traded properly. Other areas, for the BATs are a bit more challenging, right? So, for example, some of us are trying to figure out how to really drive e-commerce in the market, right? And e-commerce is obviously, challenging in terms of getting the right measurements in place to look at what you're actually receiving. You will see in terms of your results in the sales, right? But you're not going to be able to measure the actual viewability of your ads, etc., etc., etc. So it depends. You have the windows. Another window that you have is to understand when you're working with Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent, Jingdong, that they're not monolithic companies. They're companies with many, many different product development units. And if you understand which products that they're trying to develop and kind of play on side to help them to get those products into market in a better way, then you can get in early and kind of impact how those products are being measured in market. So that's another way that we're working with them to actually improve the standards of measurability.
Yeah, and before you jump in, I know you're gonna talk about this next, but BAD controls quite a big chunk of the Chinese market. So let me just give you some stats here. Tencent has $861 million. 861 million mobile active users on QQ. On WeChat and Weixin, 938 million. That's like, I don't know how many times bigger than Singapore is as a population. Alibaba has obviously, I think the biggest e-commerce market right now in the world has overtaken the US, and Baidu has 80% of the China's search market. Do your clients care outside of BAT?
Well, of course, BAT, Baidu, etc., is obviously always on the list. Okay, I think as an agency, one of the things that we do right now is not just our role with our clients. It's not just about getting that whole comms plan, getting that whole media schedule there. In China, it's also we play the role of basically a very strategic publisher partnership kind of, conversations with our clients. Now, obviously, again, it also depends on the budgets. Now, I would argue that, in a lot of cases, a lot of the local clients, because of limited budgets, they obviously know where their audience is. They know where most of them are. They're not going to look beyond the major players, right? But then the thing is that in some of our other clients, they don't just want to look at the fact that, we're playing with the majors, but they want data. They want quality. They want the knowledge. They want to be learning about what they're doing so that they can actually better inform their planning for future campaigns. So of course, in that regard, then the kind of, I would say the selection of the partners we work with will have a different set of criteria. It's not just about cost. It's about the quality of the inventory. It's about how likely would they let us tag their site. How likely would they allow us, for example, we work with Miaozhen as well. How likely would they allow us to bring Miaozhen in? So those are the different sets of criteria in terms of then lending a set of partners for the client.
According to Albert, parts of it you can track.
Yes, well, the parts of it may actually then get a vote in this case.
Yeah, so that brings us to actually Louise. I know that you are based in Singapore, and you're kind of a different side of the coin here. You understand the Chinese market, but your clients are actually based in Singapore, and you're trying to help them target Chinese consumers when they make their way to the Singapore market to spend money. And in that prospect, you actually work with very closely with the BATs. Maybe you can share a little bit about your relationship with the BAT and what kind of data are they willing to share with you?
All right. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Louis from FOMO. So basically what we do is we start from a payment company in Singapore. So we are a newcomers for this industry. So we are the first one to aggregate all the Chinese payment, including WeChat Pay, Alipay, China Union Pay, or Baidu Wallet, to provide to the overseas merchant to help them to collect money from mainland Chinese customer or from Chinese tourists who are coming to Singapore overseas. Then once the merchants, they start to collect money from China, then they say, hey, what's next? I want to reach out to more Chinese. I want to do more business with Chinese, get my brand aware by Chinese, this kind of incoming tourists. Then the next step is they're looking for marketing. That's how we actually start our journey with this advertising. So basically, coming back to the question is about this, let's say our perspective for the programmatic landscape in China is, at this moment, most of the, I believe in long tail theory, 2080 rule. Right now, the programmatic advertising in China, all the platforms are aggregating all the tail part, I would say, like, which means not include the BAT. Okay, but BAT, their strategy right now is more to do themselves, which means to direct buy from Guangdiantong, from Alibaba platform, or from Baidu directly. So our rule here is to, a little bit different from programmatic player is we bring the merchants to on this BAT platform to buy directly from their inventories, to do the real-time biddings on those inventories, which is now gradually open to the overseas merchant. So that's basically our rules here. In terms of data, because it's their own platform, which is not leveraging on the third-party platform, so they have tons of the data for you to choose different kind of secondary, different kind of tags, which includes almost over 100 primary tags and 200 plus secondary tags for you to precisely locate any kind of clients, or maybe WeChat users, or Alibaba users, or Alipay users when they are overseas or when they are in China or somewhere. If you want to try, maybe you can just open your WeChat right now and you go to Discover and search. There's a button called Find the Nearby Official Account. Then if you list down all the big now the advertisers on WeChat platform right now in Singapore, and if you want to try Alipay, you can just open your Alipay wallet right now, it will do the LPS for you, to locate you at this place, and then you will see the nearby advertisers on Alipay platform.
So the data that they gave you, how do you know how valid they are? Because they're coming from the 3 BATs, and how then do the marketers here in Singapore, do they trust the data that's coming from the BAT? And do you put in a third party, like a Melton, in to try and verify the data?
Yes, that's a good question right now. As Albert just now mentioned, I mean, now they are getting more and more open to work with a third party like ad tracking, like they are working with AdMaster and also Miaozhen on this. And sometimes they allow you to add pixels, especially for the overseas market. Now they are starting to use a different kind of strategy to be slightly open compared to what they are doing in China. So they have some different kind of strategy for overseas, and which they want to fit into the local kind of context, and then they will allow you to do some of the tracking. But yes, it's still a problem at this moment. Yeah.
So, Albert, then you said that you use cookies, right, to track them. So when you're looking at then tracking the other parts of the BAT that you're not allowed to touch, how do you then actually try to create a more a complete picture for clients and brands to know whether their campaigns are doing well in China? How do you fill in the gaps?
Overall, I think the only way, probably the only way, is to work with brand owner to encourage publisher to be more open. For example, like viewability is a big issue. Technology-wise, we are ready. We can have a demo to show you whenever you scroll the screen and at what position it is actually viewable and not. That technology is ready. The only problem is the publisher collaboration. So if you work with some big brands and talk to them nicely, of course, and then eventually, you know, this is how Melton started ad tracking in 2006. So it's a journey, but eventually we must believe the market will eventually open up, because you can't force client to believe if you are selling a fish and you convince the buyer this fish is fresh. Of course it's fresh, right? It's from the seller. So it's third-party importance is very important. Eventually it will change. I believe that. It's a journey. Yeah.
So last thing, do you believe, how nicely do you talk to the publishers? And
Well, we do actually talk quite nicely.
I'm not
to
going
them.
to say kickbacks, but you
No,
know,
we do talk nicely to them. Yeah, we have to, right? I mean, you know, the publishers are calling the shots to a large extent in China. So, but I think it's about understanding them as well as talking to them, right? So, I mean, one of the things that we're seeing now is, you know, there's quite a different way that Alibaba is approaching the market to how Tencent plus Jingdong is approaching the market. Alibaba is you know, rolling out their uni-marketing suite, and it's, you know, it's the best thing for advertisers and marketers in sliced bread, right? It's like full set of data, everything you need, you can have it on our platform. We'll even provide you with, you know, the measurement, but don't come with your own stuff, is basically what they're saying. Land all your stuff inside our ecosystem, and you'll be happy, right?
and they're giving away data analytics for free to some merchants.
Well, they are allowing data to be used, but they're not giving it away, right? There's a distinction. So, you know, and that's, you know, and basically they're saying, trust us, get into our suite of tools, and we will provide you with results in the end, right? And you just have to trust that the process is going to bring you where you want to go. It's a big ask, right? It's kind of a big ask. I think it's a big ask. And then you have, you know, your Tencent and Jingdong, which has a slightly different approach. They probably have as rich a data set, not as polished a marketing suite that they're operating, but probably can achieve a lot of the same results, but with more transparency. That's how I'm kind of seeing it at the moment, right? And so, of course, when we're talking to Alibaba, we're kindly encouraging them to look to the other side and see how actually the Tencent and the Jingdong are opening up a little bit more. So maybe Alibaba could consider to do some of the same, you know. And we're also trying to figure out, you know, the different parts of Alibaba, because you have Youku, you have Alimama, you have different divisions that are all operating with the same name of a product suite, but they're actually operating in a different way. So it's about understanding, getting deep in, knowing different people, understanding what is actually possible to do, and then executing your strategy from that perspective.
And Yen, are your clients buying that trust crap?
Well, I think I'll try to be fair here. I don't think there's any fishy business going on, to be fair. I think the thing is, what's happening right now is publishers who has big data, who's able to actually use that data, they are saying to us, yes, we can actually allow you to actually leverage our data to better do your audience segmentation, but you then buy in our platform. Now, like I said, if I'm going to be standing on their side, that is a business proposition. Because I'm actually saying that you are using my data, you are actually then able to interrogate my audience, and as long as you're very clear about what audience you're after, you're paying that money, and in some cases, they're actually given that data as part of the media cost. Okay? So it is about them giving you some value so that you continue to spend with them. I would actually think that is actually quite an unsound business proposition if they give you the value and then you actually spend your money elsewhere and buy on other platforms. And like I said, also to be fair, we have publishers outside the China right now that's doing that already. So they have gone the China way, okay? So to put that in perspective, so what I'm really saying is that when we work with our clients, it is about firstly understanding their audience. Okay? And also, to some clients, they actually have very rich first-party data as well. But they're just not very good at organizing it. They're not very good at actually making use of it. So, I guess from our perspective, one of the things that we can do is to then support them to say, okay, here's your first-party data. Are you making good use of it? Are you organizing in such a way that then you can actually derive some insights out of it and obviously apply it? Now, if not, then that's where our I guess, support can come in. Then also there's now what we call second-party data. Basically, especially in agencies like ours, there's all these opportunities to marry clients, to actually make sure they have some synergy, they can work together. They're actually able to then do some, I guess, knowledge exchange, data actually sync. So I think those are the opportunities. And if we continue to do things like that, we're then less dependent on third-party data in markets that they're lacking. We're less dependent on, so-called dependent on publisher data. But of course, most importantly, and we say this a lot in Asia, we still have a lot of clients who do not believe in paying for ad serving or tracking. They don't actually want to pay for certain things. But that is part and parcel of the marketing budget, in order to collect that kind of data.
Yep. And so despite the fact that they don't want to pay, there's still a lot of international ad tech vendors, quite a few of them in this room, that want to go into the China market and try to grab that piece of the pie. But those that have done so have gone into this Bermuda Triangle. They've gone in there and kind of disappeared. What do you think went wrong there? I think Albert has some very strong views about that. Why are they flying and crashing and no one knows what's happened to them?
I can share a little bit. I've been in China for about 11, 12 years now. And what I have seen is China is a high potential, definitely. Let's say somebody would say, okay, China versus other country, maybe there's 5 times more potential. But the insight is the competition is probably 10 times worse. So because of fierce competition, extremely fierce competition, a lot of the foreign players trying to come to China fail. That is why, apart from realizing the reality, is a lot harder than what it seems. You have to find a very good local partners, trustable one, to work with you. And any success formula in the past, outside of China, you bring in, always adapt. Always do it the China way. If not, definitely you will fail. Yeah.
What is exactly the China way?
That is a billion-dollar question, right? Things like relationship. For example, how do you convince a very tough publisher to give in to allow you to track your ads, for example? It comes with some relationship. It comes with some tech. The way we deal with Chinese is you must really understand to give them face. Yeah? You cannot piss them off, right? You got to work nicely with them.
What's pissing them off?
So there are many ways, basically. The whole culture.
I'm having a lot of imagery in my head right now about pissing.
But I would also say, yeah, absolutely, the whole Guanxi thing is a big thing. I think also in this market where there's still a lot of room for innovation. I think if you do bring to the table a client who's willing to actually, kind of be bold and do something different, then you can say to the publisher, this is what we want to do, this is how we want to do it, this is how, well, obviously you have to have the dollars to support it as well. I think that there has been opportunities for us to be able to have those conversations. Now again, like I said, some of them are quite willing to try, and and also because, like I said, it all starts a relationship. So if you can even have that conversation, sometimes you need to build out just before you can even have that conversation.
Luis?
Yeah, maybe I can jump in here because the same journey you want to localize in China market is exactly the same we are trying to do to localize our kind of service in Singapore market is the same. But the difference is maybe here it's a little bit easier, right? All right. So basically it's the same. So right now I would say when we are trying to localize, let's say to do the media buy on this BAT platform directly on their do the media buy directly. So it still takes time to educate the market because when we talk to the advertisers and when we talk to the agencies to look for partners, we always face the same question. First of all, most of my creative people or my account manager, they are not Chinese speaking, but most of the Chinese media buy platform are still Chinese. I mean, that's unfortunately. So another one is the design, kind of taste or design for your, let's say for your marketing materials is totally different compared to the Western world. I mean, let's say Chinese, they like those kind of very bright color, bright yellow, bright blue. That's what you see for those kind of logos of Tencent or of Alibaba, right? But here it's different. So people have different kind of taste, but your designer have different kind of, are different. So these are all the practical challenge when we are trying to localize and educate the service from China to the local market. So we just feel that it takes time. But I think in the middle way, it's just to be practical, to have both the pragmatic advertising with your platform to automate the entire media buy and to try this BAT media buy platform directly. So you have a package. One is semi-auto, one is fully auto. Then provide the package to the advertiser, which might be an interim solution at this moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last, anything to add about the China way of doing business?
Well, look, I have a lot of respect for companies who come in to try to do business in China. It's not easy, right? I mean, I've met several Norwegian companies as well who, they contact me. They say, Lars, we want to do business in China. Can we set up a meeting? And I'm like, yeah. In the beginning, I said yes, and then after a while, I said no because it's just a waste of time until they're established in the market. There's significant investment behind it. The team is localized, and then you can start to actually talk. That's the first step, right? And apart from that, yeah, I mean, what Albert said is very true. I mean, you have to engage with your market in a proper way, and even then, you're not assured to win because competition is tough.
I think the key is win-win. Sometimes to ensure China also win with you, it's about investment. It's about not a sprint. It's about a marathon. So sometimes a lot of foreign companies, they come in, they are hoping for efficiency right away, which is not true. You must come for the long run. Then for win-win, it's okay. Yeah.
So win-win the BAT way, yeah?
Just one point on that. Make sure you localize all your decision making. I mean, that's really important. You can't helicopter in from, but that's been shown so many times. It's almost a truism.
Just to add to that, I think a lot of frustration is also because there are no standards at the moment, right? Because we like standards. We like to know, we like to know that there's a standardized way of doing certain things, standardized way of buying things. The way programmatic works should be the same, But I think at the moment, in a market as big as China, we don't have that, right? And we still don't have, I guess, a body or association or group of people who actually rise above and say, we'll do it. But of course, the majors do that because then they are obviously monopolizing that climate or that ecosystem. So I think that's kind of one of the frustration. But like I said, if we move into other parts of Asia, we might actually find similar challenges as well. So like what what Luis actually said, it is about trying to localize and really understanding what is that kind of local conversation you should be having.
So to wrap up then, what we talked earlier about how Google comes in and try to educate the marketers about what's the right way to do digital or to do programmatic. In China, I mean, they're in true Western form. I've heard of international companies going, China's doing it the wrong way, DSPs are doubling as publishers, they should be separate. Is that the most urgent thing that we need to look at for China to kind of push programmatic forward in the positive, in a positive direction?
No, I think the first thing is we have to say what is their way. It's not about us going in there and say you're doing it the wrong way. Yeah, because I think they are certainly flourishing. The market is flourishing with or without local, foreign, so-called foreign brands investments.
Is it only flourishing for some publishers?
Well, of course, we know that. We know who are the ones that are making most of the money. But the thing is, that there's no deniable there's also smaller local DSP partners. The long tail, the long tail, especially for like some mobile video. I mean, there's heaps of inventory out there. So it is not just about playing with the BATs, but it is about really being very pragmatic and say, how do you do this? Is that way going to work for me? Is that where I'm going to place my dollars? Or if not, you're the advertiser, you can put it elsewhere.
Awesome, and with that, we kind of wrap up. Time's up. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.